Looks like it's working now.
I'm live.
Says I'm live. Can't see you though.
I can't see. Well, we hear you. Well, there I am. I don't see you, Aaron.
I don't see you.
Oh, you hear both of us? Okay. Well, as long as they can hear both of us.
That's weird.
Well, welcome to the Shapiro Law Firm presents a Facebook Live event. Today, hi Tanya. Thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about marriage-based adjustment of status. Wait, I guess I'll leave the phone on so you can hear both of us. I don't know if you can see both of us. I apologize. Little technical difficulties. What's that? What's that, Aaron?
No, go ahead. I'm trying to see if I can get this thing to work.
Okay. Well, while you do that, I'll introduce us. My name is Amanda Schaefer. I'm an attorney at the Shapiro Law Firm. I've been practicing about 8 years now. And supposed to be co-hosting, if you can hopefully see and hear us both tonight, is Aaron Shapiro. He is the owner and founder of the Shapiro Law Firm and my brother-in-law. So today we're going to talk about marriage-based adjustment of status. This means when you marry, when you're not an American citizen or permanent resident, and you marry an American permanent resident or citizen, and you apply for your green card, and you're physically present inside the United States. If you're outside the United States, there's a slightly different process. It's called consular processing. We're not going to talk about that today, but essentially all the same types of evidence is needed for both. They're just a different process. So, did I lose my co-host?
I'm here. I'm trying to get this thing to go live. It says you can reach people by adding a title. I don't understand.
So add your title and press the blue button on the bottom. I think. Either way, we'll keep going here. And I do have to give a disclaimer that nothing that we say here today will form an attorney-client relationship. We're here to give general legal advice. If you have a specific question, we'll try our best to answer it. And we're more than happy to talk afterwards. This is our third Facebook Live. We welcome you to like us and follow us on Facebook so you don't miss any of this. But today, like I said, we're talking about adjustment of status for people who marry a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident and are physically present inside the U.S. at the time of filing. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. And if you want to ask anonymously, I'm trying my best to keep my eye on emails and direct messages. So feel free. We did get a few questions in advance, and we'll get to those as we go through. So first, we're going to talk about eligibility requirements. Tanya, what he could do is ask you to join on. You could click the link. You know, Aaron, look at what Tanya wrote. I think she may know how to solve our technical difficulty. If you could figure that out, please do.
Wait, how do I? All right. I think I'm on a different video thing altogether at the same time as you.
No, I think you can hear both of us. Broadcast interrupted, it says. But anyways, people want to hear more about the eligibility as opposed to our technical difficulties. So the first eligibility requirement is you need to have a qualifying relationship. There are other qualifying relationships besides a spouse, but today, like I said, we're focused on spouses. So you're going to have to prove that your spouse was either born in the U.S., naturalized, or is a permanent resident. Second, as I've already stated, you have to be physically present in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., it's a different process. You cannot adjust your status from every single visa category, and that's important to know too. a good example, I'll talk about J1 waivers in a few. But J1s are one of the biggest ones that you cannot adjust from. I don't know if people can hear and see us, or who they hear and see. If someone can give us a heads up, let us know so we can. Tanya's trying to tell you how to do it. I don't see any settings in here, but I'll keep providing the information while Aaron fiddles.
I ask you to join on. Send a request to him. I've never been on Facebook before.
Yeah, Aaron doesn't know how to use Facebook, and Facebook told me I was co-hosting. It asked me to add the co-host, so I am.
You can do that. Okay.
But they can hear you through the phone anyway. So.
Hi, Tanya.
So we're on the third eligibility requirement. You asked to join on. One second. No pages. I don't know.
Wait a minute. I'm logged in as the law firm. That's why. See?
So do some. They can see me. They can't see you.
Ignore me.
Ignore him. All right. So third eligibility requirement. You have to be inspected and admitted or inspected and paroled. What that means is that you entered the country. If you needed a visa or a visa waiver at a port of entry, you showed your visa to Border Patrol and they admitted you, or in some cases paroled you into the country. It doesn't apply to someone who crossed the border illegally. That's called an IWI, or an entry without inspection. That person was not inspected and admitted or inspected and paroled. And I'll get to that a little bit more in a little. The next requirement is a visa number has to be immediately available. What that means is that there are certain, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, there's no visa numbers. There's no limit on the number of people who can get a green card each year based on marriage to a U.S. citizen. However, if you're married to a permanent resident, there is a limit. Lately, the number's been current, meaning that they haven't reached the maximum for the year, so you can apply if you're in this country in lawful status at the time. But that's one of the drawbacks. Go ahead. I think Tanya seems to know what she's talking about with how you go.
I don't know what you mean.
Did you log in as Aaron? You can't. The law firm doesn't have a Facebook account. It just has a page. So I don't know how you have to be logged in as you.
I'm logged in as me.
Yeah. Okay.
Invite me or something. Can you invite me something?
No, I don't know how. I don't see any. It doesn't. I don't know. I wish I could. But you were typing in the chat. But anyways, let's just keep going.
Just go live.
So next you have to be the beneficiary of an approved immigrant visa. Essentially that is what is known as the marriage petition. That has to be approved, of course. Next, you have to be admissible or eligible for a waiver of inadmissibility. And we'll get to inadmissibilities in a little, but basically this will apply to criminal history. Certain criminal history will bar you. Certain immigration violations will bar you. Things like terrorism, public safety threat, public charge. So there's a whole host of inadmissibilities that someone could be subject to that if you are, you're either not going to get a green card or you're going to need a waiver to get a green card. And waivers we'll touch on in a little as well. So those are all the eligibility requirements. And next we're going to move on to talk about inadmissibilities. And anyone who's just joining us, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. So the most common inadmissibility is an IWI. I mentioned that a little while ago. And that stands for entry without inspection. And this is the person that crossed over the border illegally, that snuck into the country. If you enter without inspection, you can, even if you marry a U.S. citizen, you cannot get your green card without two things. Assuming nothing else, assuming no other violations or criminal history, you're going to need to exit the U.S. and re-enter through consular processing, or, well, you need both of these, and you need a waiver. And waivers are not easy to get. The nice thing about the waiver in this case is if you're in the U.S., you apply for the marriage petition, then you apply for the waiver. You don't have to leave the U.S. until the waiver gets approved, and you're essentially only going to be outside the country for a month or two in non-COVID times when the embassies are open. So it is nice that they have that 601A waiver. It's called that's the form, it's 601A. But waivers are not easy to get because you need to prove an extreme hardship to a qualifying U.S. citizen or permanent resident relative. And in the case of a 601A, I believe, Aaron, it's the spouse, hardship to the spouse or parent, right?
Yeah.
Right. It has to be an extreme hardship, so much more than the average. Of course, your family's going to be sad if you leave the country, and they'll miss you, but it has to be a lot more than that.
And children do not qualify.
For a 601, yes, if you entered without inspection, your qualifying relative cannot be a child, even a U.S. citizen or permanent resident child. Other waivers, they do come into play.
Yeah.
The next pretty common inadmissibility is based on fraud and misrepresentation. And this could be in many different ways, fraud and misrepresentation. One example is and it's less common these days because of technology, but if you enter with someone else's visa that's not yours, you do have an entry with inspection technically under the law, but you also have a fraud and misrepresentation problem. What's that?
Yeah, I was saying it's not a good one.
No, yeah. You still need a waiver. The difference between this and entering without inspection is you don't need to physically leave the U.S. in order to get your green card, and it's instead of a 601A, it's a 601. Qualifying relatives are still the same. It has to be a parent or a spouse that's a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and you have to prove it's an extreme hardship to them. If you were to leave, not just if you were to leave the country, it's if you were to leave the country without them, and if they were to leave with you, you have to show an extreme hardship. So you have two scenarios, and that's very important because we see a lot of waivers get denied because people will prove, look, my spouse can't live without me. They're going to get depressed, but they don't say why the spouse can't come with them, and that's critical.
The really hard thing with regards to these kind of waivers, if you enter with somebody else's visa or identity, is proving that you actually did that. Because someone always comes to my office and they tell us this, right?
Yep.
And then they don't actually have any proof. But the crazy thing is, sometimes they'll have copies of the passport or the plane tickets or photos of them at the airport.
Or at least name and date of birth of the person. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes
we see this a lot.
Stuff works, even though it sounds ridiculous. It's important to keep records of all that kind of stuff. A lot of people don't. Yes.
Yeah. We've had clients that it burned in a fire. And
yeah, but we won her case.
We won her, yeah, that was great. That was a great one.
Yeah.
That was a hard one. We had to get her file, and we had to prove that there was a fire, and we had to put in all the documents. Luckily,
Very cool case.
Yeah, she had applied for stuff a long time ago, so the documents were there at least to prove it. So but it's still a hard one. So yeah, fraud and misrepresentation can occur in many different ways. Another really common thing has to do with what's called the 90-day rule, and that's about, let's say you enter with a B2.
This is a new one.
It's not new. It's just that they
changed
it. They changed it. It used to be 30-60 rule. Now it's a 90 rule. So if you enter as a visitor in any non-immigrant category, so non-immigrant means I'm just coming to stay in the country temporarily and then I'm out. And I'm not going to permanently reside here. But when you marry a U.S. citizen and then you apply for adjustment of status, now you're telling the government, I'm going to be here permanently. So basically, the issue is if you usually get 6 months out of B2. If you do certain things within 90 days, there's going to be a presumption that when you got to the border and you told the Custom and Border Patrol, I'm only staying for 2 weeks, there's going to be a presumption that you lied. And you're going to now have to prove that your action of marrying a U.S. citizen or filing for adjustment that your decision changed after you entered the country and that you weren't lying at the border. And that's not always easy to prove. We've had a number of times, especially with COVID now, there were a lot of people who couldn't go home and they were planning to like marry their significant other anyway. And we've had a couple of these cases. And we do truly believe that people had their plane tickets to go home, they were ready, and life does change, and that's okay. But you have to be able to explain.
I the other day from a lady like this.
Yeah.
She's LPR out of the country. She's gonna get stuck.
Yeah, well, that's a different story. But point is that people do change their plans when they over time, especially in the face of a pandemic. But very important, you have to explain it properly to USCIS, or they're not going to approve it. And if you're in this situation, like you ended up getting married within 90 days of your entry, and now you want your green card, we both highly recommend that you use a lawyer for that, because it's not. Otherwise, you're going to really risk not just getting it denied, but being placed in removal proceedings, which means or deportation, as some people know it.
And once you have a problem on an application, and if you try to fix it or refix it or whatever, you kind of have that in the record. So if you file an I-130 that doesn't get approved for some sort of reason like this, or a 45 doesn't get approved for some intent issue, you're always going to have to deal with that.
You're always going to have to explain it.
It's much harder to fix an immigration case after it goes wrong than it is to do it right the first time. That's critical. We make more money fixing cases than we do on initial filing.
That's very true.
Absolutely. And I hear the filing fees are going to start going up on appeals and stuff like that.
I'm sure, because they don't want people to appeal.
They don't want people to have problems renewing working permits with appeals pending. All sorts of things are going to happen.
That's true. The next inadmissibility.
You said asylum cases there. That's definitely.
Asylum. But we're not talking about asylum today. We're talking about marriage-based adjustment of status.
Appeals processes and the ability to get a work permit and things like that. That worries me.
Well, let's talk about criminal history, because that's a big one too. If you have any type of criminal history, even if you were arrested and the case was dismissed, you still have to tell them.
You got a ticket.
Or ticket. Well, not a traffic violation.
Some sort of a misdemeanor, some sort of a violation in New York. Even a desk appearance ticket.
Well, DAT, 100%, but not a non-moving traffic violation. But for the most part, it's better to be safe and disclose if you're not sure.
Tell the lawyer.
And if you do have any type of criminal history, you could be setting yourself up to being kicked out of this country. So you want to make sure before you apply that either you're eligible for a waiver or you don't need one. Otherwise,
most things are not a big deal.
Right. Well,
so don't freak out too much.
Because people plead, unless you murdered someone or
Well, or did something you know is a CIMT or an aggravated felony.
CIMT is a crime involving.
Most people have like tiny little things that they freak out about, and then they choose not to do anything to immigration because they think they had arrested, and it's a big problem. It's not always such a big problem. It's better to ask than to assume. True.
And we're not going to get into the criminal history and or criminal law and immigration law, and their intersection is incredibly complex and is a topic for another day. But just
the second question I always ask.
But just so you know what Aaron's talking about, CIMT stands for crime involving moral turpitude. It's a confusing thing that it doesn't have a real definition.
It's supposed to be something that's morally offensive.
Right, and so if you committed a crime that was morally offensive, even if you weren't convicted, in immigration law, that's another important thing to know, that you don't have to be convicted for your criminal history to hurt you. I remember the guy, I forgot who it was.
Oh my god, this poor guy.
The guy who had like 10 arrests.
He had like 10 or 11 arrests.
Yeah, he had like
nothing. Prosecution.
They never.
He just kept saying,
they just arrested him.
Respect the laws in this country, you're a troublemaker, you have bad moral character, even though you don't have any convictions, we don't want you here.
Even though he didn't even have any adjourned contemplation of dismissal, he simply got arrested and never charged him like 10 times.
And there's nothing. And if he was in proceedings, I'm sure we could get him adjusted, but they will not put him in proceedings.
Yeah. So
it's driving us crazy.
So another point from that.
He wants to apply for asylum to get into proceedings, but I said I don't think that's the right thing.
That's not the right thing. But to keep in mind though how even if you're eligible in all respects for a green card, USCIS still gets to exercise their discretion. So they don't have. You have no right. You have no entitlement.
To them.
And that's why that was the argument with this guy. Like we said, we appealed it. We said, look, we didn't appeal. Yeah, we were like, this guy, he's never done anything wrong. We explained it all, but they didn't care. And they didn't have to care, unfortunately.
He's sort of an activist, and he keeps getting in trouble with the cops.
Right.
That's kind of what it is with him.
So yeah, criminal history, very complex, very important that if you have any, even arrest, even a desk appearance ticket, contact an immigration attorney who also can advise on the criminal aspect of it, because it's, yep.
If you have a criminal case, before you even bother with doing anything, get a copy of certificate of disposition. Just make sure you have it. You're gonna need it for something at some point.
That's true. Ideally,
even if it's not immigration.
And ideally, you'll consult an immigration lawyer before you take a plea or before anything, but because you want to make sure that you're not setting yourself up to be inadmissible or removable by pleading because they're
call us if you get arrested.
Lawyers who do criminal defense and not immigration don't understand immigration because it's very confusing. So you want to make sure that you're clear on that before you accept any type of plea or offer from the government, because they're not there to make sure you don't get deported. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one it's not a new one, but it's been recently changed. The public charge inadmissibility. If you watch the news at all, then you may have heard about this. There's a new 20-page form that we now have to submit with everything else. That what it means by public charge, that you're not likely to go on public benefits in the future. So you're not going to need.
You're not going to start costing America money.
Right. Now, we're not here to debate politics or anything, but this is what we have to do. And now this new 20-page form also comes with a lot more evidence that's required, including proof of your education, proof of having a job, your foreign taxes if you were outside the U.S. for the last filing year, if you've ever applied for a public benefit, even if you withdrew your application, you have to tell them. If you ever applied for a fee waiver in immigration, you have to tell them.
Yeah, but most of these things I find most people aren't going to have.
Credit reports and credit scores. It's a really long form asking for a lot. Most people aren't going to have a lot of things, but you still have to.
They're going to have another problem for working without employment authorization.
It also asks for your liabilities and debt, so any credit card debt, student loans, etc. Not just the assets are not just you; it's your household. So there's things to help you. So basically, immigration, the way this is all new. It started in February. That it's going to be handled is that they're going to look at the entire picture of your financial picture, just like with your marriage, and I'll get to that in a minute about how you prove your marriage is real on paper. But when they look at the whole picture of your marriage, they're going to look at the whole picture of your finances. And because COVID happened, we don't know yet how they're going to be adjudicating these public charge issues.
I don't even know what's going to happen with the coming election. This stuff may never become an issue.
Well, right, but we're not here to debate politics. But I mean,
I'm not debating.
I just know I don't enjoy doing an extra form that's 20 pages long.
This is a horrible thing. This is here to hurt people.
This is here
to cost people money.
Oh, 100%.
Lawyers. This is here to really hurt people.
But
it's to create ineligibilities for people who are otherwise eligible.
Hopefully, we could change this in the near future, hopefully. But this is what it is. And honestly, even the immigration lawyers, I'm in a lot of immigration groups, and I talk to other immigration lawyers across the country, thousands of them, and all of us are just like, what is this? What is it? It's telling people to prove their English skills, even if they come from an English-speaking country. So, I don't know.
This stuff is going to take a $10,000 process and make it a $15,000 process. People have to go to English school.
Yeah.
This is going to get absurd.
It's going to get
absurd.
But we're not here to debate the pros and cons of that. We're just here to give you the information about what you need. So.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
Well, right. No, we know. I mean, we are very thorough with what we do, and we filed them. They've gotten accepted, and just like everybody else, what's to come is the question. And then I also mentioned earlier. Oh, by the way, if you're just joining us, if you would like to ask a question, don't be shy. We're here to help. We're talking about different inadmissibilities or things that will make you ineligible to get a green card. Now we're on the last one I have. These are the most common. There's a lot more. But J1s, J1 exchange visitors who have a 2-year home residency required.
These are the au pairs, the cultural exchange people.
Yes, because researchers, students in some cases.
Yeah, people who work at theme parks.
So, not every J1 is subject to the same requirement. In fact, you need to, sometimes you have to actually ask the Department of State if you are subject to the requirement or not. But
Can you hear me in there? No.
Yo, Aaron, it's really loud. What is that?
Sorry, that was Goldie, the office dog. Had to go outside.
Oh, our coworker. She's our therapy dog.
Yeah, no, just as outside with the neighbor, they're having a fight.
Okay.
So Goldie had to go out there.
Anyways, so with the J1, if you're sometimes it says
Happy birthday to Lila.
Sometimes it says on your visa, your J1 visa, that you're subject to 2-year home residency requirement. Sometimes it doesn't, but in each case,
it doesn't. You're lucky.
It's not always clear, so sometimes you do have to get an advisory opinion. And their J1 waivers tend to be easier than other types of waivers, just because there's one that's called a no objection letter, where like literally you're asking your country not to object to it, and they say, okay, we don't care, and then you can apply.
There's others for doctors, a Conrad waiver, but we're not going to get into that at all right now.
No. We're not going to get into that now. All you have to know is if you're here on a J1 and you want to adjust your status, you should contact an immigration attorney to make sure you're not subject to the home residency requirement, the 2-year.
And don't go anywhere until you do,
right.
Unless you're going to go out of status.
Right.
Because then you might get stuck for real.
True. The next, we're going to touch on conditional versus permanent residency. Conditional residency is when you marry a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and you have your green card interview. Within 2 years of before your 2-year anniversary. That's the way to say it. You only get a 2-year green card, and 90 days before.
Let me jump in really quick to clarify.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because I've had this conversation 100,000 times. Ultimately, the job is to prove the marriage is real. And if you're married less than 2 years from the time you get your green card, immigration wants you to come and prove that the marriage is still real. 2 years. It's a test. This isn't a short-term marriage. It's a real marriage. So 90 days before that second year, you file, and you file well to prove that you're still married, you're still living together, you're still sharing a life. And then better believe it, you're going to have an interview. And that's going to take a year. And at the end of all this, maybe you'll have a 10-year green card.
Well, that's the goal.
That's what it's all about. It's about proving the marriage is really real and that it's not some fake thing. You made it through a year, great. No, you got to really make it through 3 years.
And when a permanent resident is someone who has a 10-year green card, you can renew it every 10 years, or you can apply for your citizenship. And if you're married, if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you're still living with a U.S. citizen after 3 years, you're eligible for naturalization. So
if you have your permanent green card, if your 751 is pending, you can still file.
We have
to be heard together.
751s. We used to be weary of that, but
I don't think there's any reason to be.
Yeah, well, we've heard they're handling it different because we don't like to confuse immigration. We sending them 2 applications at once is hard for them. But we've heard lately it's been taking so long with the I-51s that's like the only way to get them to remember your clients that exists. But sometimes, yeah. But yeah, so that's the nice thing about that. Again, any questions, please chat us up. Next, K1s. K1s are fiancé visas. And K1s are, Aaron, you want to explain the difference with K1s and K3s and I-130s?
No, but I wanted to explain the difference about what you're supposed to do when you call and you say, hey, look, I'm going to get married. But you're in another country. So here's the important point. The important point is, if you're going to get married, you're with someone in another country, and you're from America, and you come back here and they're married and living over there, it's going to be really hard to prove that you're sharing a life. So the appropriate thing to do would be to file for a fiancé visa, get them here on a fiancé visa, then get married, then adjust and prove you're sharing a life, because that's when you're actually sharing a life. Very important.
And the big thing that you left out there is that when you file for a K-1 fiancé visa, all you have to show is two things. That you intend to get, well, three things.
You've seen each other in the last 2 years.
Yeah, you've seen each other in the last 2 years unless there's like a religious exception, like in person.
Yeah.
And
He's a marriage broker.
that you can get married. Well, I'm not even, we don't deal with marriage brokers. The second thing, I'm just talking about the three big things. That you've met in person in the last 2 years, unless you're eligible for an exception. That you are able to get married, meaning if you've ever been married before your spouse either passed away or you're divorced or annulled or whatever. And
you don't file a fiancé visa if you can't get married.
Right. You intend to marry your spouse within 90, both of you intend to marry within 90 days of the entry. Once that happens, you don't have to then file the marriage petition part. You've already kind of had that. So once you get married, if you don't get married in 90 days, you got to get out. They're very strict about that, actually. And it includes dependent children that can come along with you. If you do get married in 90 days, there's actually no set time when you have to apply for your green card, but you can't work legally or travel. No, you're not considered out of status, but you don't really have one. If you get married in 90 days, the adjustment, there's no clock on it, but you should do it sooner rather than later. Yeah, you're not going to be able to work, you're not going to be able to leave the country. It's better to apply as soon as you possibly can.
Now, if you come on a K, you cannot adjust based on something else.
Right, that's what I was saying. They're very strict about that.
Critical. Well, it's horribly strict.
It's one of those.
His mother was the K, and he was a dependent, and she died after it was approved, but before their 751 conditional was approved.
Yeah.
As a result, no one filed their conditional. Mom died. All the kids' status expired with their conditional green cards. So we're fighting with the government, working with them, rather, to get the older guys approved, and the younger guy actually is going to do I-130, go out and come back based on his stepmom, so that's fine. And if they're listening, they should really get on that. But
they're lucky. Most people don't have another way to do it.
Yeah.
And it was because they were minors.
The only way to adjust is based on that petition.
Exactly. And speaking of that, I believe the client you were talking about was actually in removal proceedings, which is also known as deportation proceedings. And, it was, but people, they understand what that is. There's a different process to apply for your green card, whether you're in removal proceedings or not. And part of this is going to depend at what point you get married. So if you marry before you're ever placed in removal proceedings, then you may be filing everything all together. If you get married during, you're going to file the marriage petition first. That has to get approved. And these days, you have to then file your application for green card with the immigration judge. Sometimes they used to terminate cases so you could then apply with USCIS. But essentially, you end up having a trial with the immigration judge where your attorney is going to ask you questions to prove your eligibility for a green card. The spouse and the kids and everybody and the whole spiel. Right. The thing that gets frustrating is that, number one, court's really backed up right now, so it takes a really long time. This could be 3-4 years. I mean, we don't really even know how bad the wait's going to be now once we go back from COVID. But the New York City immigration courts have not even announced a reopening date yet. And the way that court gets packed, I don't know how. Oh, they did I think Broadway actually put up some guidelines about telephonic hearings.
Yes, it did, but that's only for those hearings. There's only 2 or 3 judges. And
well, no, there's like 9 now.
Hearings. That's not for the non-detained masters, so.
No, it was for the non-detained masters, I thought.
No, if there's certain scheduling stuff, but I was looking at hours, it's almost nothing. Yeah. Because most cases are 26 minutes. So basically, I mean, you don't want to be in removal proceedings, and that, again, another reason, if you have any doubt about your eligibility for a green card, it's imperative that you have an experienced immigration attorney assist you, because you may be setting yourself up to go into removal proceedings. And you may never be able to get a green card, but you should make sure. So any of these things we've talked about, if you're unsure about if your entry was legal, if you're unsure about your criminal history, if you're unsure about your financial abilities or to show your financial abilities,
then you highly recommended you get an immigration attorney to help you.
And if you're unsure about if your attorney knows what they're talking about, and that's a very important,
That is true.
talk to another attorney. Because immigration is hard, and it changes.
It is. If you and don't
even if somebody thinks they know what they're talking about, maybe they don't. And if something sounds too good to be true or too easy, think about a second opinion. Seriously.
And if your attorney doesn't focus, like we do other areas of law besides immigration, but immigration's the bulk of what we do.
Yeah.
It's the most. If you don't, your attorney, that should be the bulk of what your attorney does because of how complicated immigration is. It cross-sects. Like the reason the criminal history is so hard, just to give you an idea, is that when immigration law defines crimes, certain crimes in a certain way, very generally, and then there's federal law, federal crimes, and then there's state crimes, and then there's local ordinances that are crimes. And
then there's the silly way that the appeals courts decide to magically decide how each of these things applies.
Right, so
you're
dealing. So, for example, in New York, that something might be considered a felony that is not in another state considered, or an aggravated felony under immigration law.
It could be a misdemeanor in New York that immigration thinks
is a felony. Yes.
Be in jail. I think they just recently changed that law, so that might be old.
Maybe in New York.
However, it doesn't matter. All these people with previous convictions are going to be dealing with that. So.
Don't think that just because you didn't, just because you weren't sentenced to jail, that you're not going to have a problem. Don't think that because they didn't deport you at your criminal case, because that's not how it works, that you're not going to have a problem. Again, we can't stress that enough, that if you have any criminal history whatsoever, that you know what you're getting yourself into. So the next thing we want to talk about is give you an overview of how you apply for adjustment of status. And again,
you bring a check to the lawyer, you bring a check for immigration, and that's how you apply.
Thank you. Again, we're focusing on if you're physically present in the U.S. as opposed to outside the U.S. And there's a lot of forms. I wrote down there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different forms.
Yeah, the forms are not saying them.
Well, no, it's the evidence. Of course. So it's not just the forms that you fill out, because if you're married to a U.S. citizen or you're married to a permanent resident and the visa number is current, you can file everything together, which is technically the fastest way to go about it. If the visa number isn't current and you're married to a permanent resident, you have to stay. You have to stay in lawful status.
You got a problem, buddy.
Until you can get a visa number available. Otherwise, you got to leave the country, or you're never getting a green card, or your spouse has to naturalize.
If you're out of status, oh no.
Yeah, don't leave the country if you're out of status.
Bad legal advice to give on the internet, but that's not legal advice.
Wasn't saying to leave the country. I said if.
We're not saying to leave the country or to not.
I actually meant if you can't stay in lawful status until the number's available, leave the country. Well, you can leave the country before you go out of status, or call a lawyer. Because you might be able to extend your status or change your status, but if you're not in lawful status and you marry a permanent resident, you're not getting a green card unless that permanent resident becomes a U.S. citizen before you file.
Yeah.
Very important.
And don't go doing I-130 petitions. Don't trust that. Just having approved I-130 at a marriage to an LPR nowadays. I think it's a better idea to wait.
An I-130 is a petition for an alien relative. It's the petition it's a petition you file to prove your family relationship. It's the same form for if you're marrying for marriage, it's for a parent, child, stepkids, adoption, orphans. Aunt and
uncle is not a category.
Aunts and uncles are not a category.
Grandparents are not categories.
Great-grandparents.
In-laws are not categories.
Correct. And so you have to submit, like we said, a lot of evidence. So what we do when clients come to us, we first give them a questionnaire to fill out that covers all the questions we need in all these forms. I don't even remember how long it is anymore. I think it's like 30 pages now.
26 pages.
26?
And the additions to the new questions, so it's going to be like 30.
No, it was, it's like 30. I think
it was 26, yeah.
And we try to simplify it and not make you repeat information as much as possible. But like I said, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different forms. And that's not including, if you have an attorney, the forms for your attorney, that you have an attorney representing you and your spouse, which would add 2 more.
Count on Sesame Street in the previous slide.
I was 1, 2. So basically, when you try to prove your marriage is real, the question is, that's the big question for everybody. How do on paper I show immigration that I did not marry my spouse just to get a green card. Well, everybody's married. It is a toughie.
Everybody says that.
But everyone's relationship is different, and everybody's financial situation is different. There's no one size fits all, and that's actually helpful for you. If you're sitting out there watching, being like, I don't know if I don't have a joint bank account because I don't have a social security number. My name's not on the lease. What am you know?
Yeah, well, you're gonna get a social, and you're gonna add it together, and you're gonna build your life. And you're gonna go to your interview with your new bank account with all the usage. And your lease is updated, and your cable bills that are updated, and everything.
Oh, people have been asking questions. I didn't even see this. My thing didn't go down. Hi, Lambert.
Hey.
I'm a U.S. citizen. I got married to my fiance January 2019. And we had in early February. We were told that we didn't see the door. Okay, C. Lee, if you're still watching us, I apologize. I just saw your message. I didn't know I wasn't scrolled down. But I can answer that for you. It's never 120 days.
For what?
Can you see the chat?
No, I'm just playing cool.
Oh, great. She says, I am a U.S. citizen. I got married to my fiance January 2019, sent in the application in June 2019, and we had in early Feb 2020, I think they had their interview, and they were told, if you don't receive your green card within 120 days.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. Don't be stressed. You got coronavirus.
She said her husband called.
Her
husband called. They said the waiting period is now 8 to 28 months.
So I just said, you got another year to wait.
Yeah,
So
Lee.
another 3 years to wait.
C. Lee Diana, that is not you or your husband. That is nothing. They are terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Even before COVID, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to one of those interviews and they said, oh, it's going to be give us 3 months. And then like 3 years later, my clients are like, where's my green card? And I'm like, I don't know.
I love hearing from people, but I hate having to tell them the same thing over and over.
It's the most common.
I don't know. You know when I know. You probably will get the letter the day before I will.
No, you should make sure.
I'm sorry. Because we're control freaks, and when we can't control something, it doesn't feel good as a lawyer.
Right. And one thing important to know is there is a tool online, the case status tool on USCIS.gov, where you can check the status of your immigration case. And it's fairly accurate. It's not always 100%, but it's a good idea to every so often to look into it or call the 1-800 number, which is more accurate.
And they're good. They pick up.
Yeah, you're right. That is more than 2 years. And because they're terrible. They're not good at their job.
Don't be surprised.
It's not just you. It's every.
These are hard. Look.
No.
They're not terrible people.
I didn't say they were terrible people. They're terrible at their job. They take so long. They lose things, but you have to have patience.
I'm not to help immigration have an easy job of proving your case.
Right. So we make
That's it.
A lot of
a long time because it wasn't great. I don't know.
A lot of the things you have basically you need to make it super clear for them of what everything is, and that's what we do. We know how to do it so that it can go as fast as possible. Because if you're missing something, everything that you're missing is going to delay it. If you don't bring all the stuff, they give people hard times all the time. You might get called in for another interview. That's another thing, and that would be if you're in New York. It's called a Stokes interview. And that's where they separate the spouses. And those take a really long time to schedule because I've sat in Stokes interviews that lasted like 4 hours.
You had one that was so...
I had one that was like all day. And so your delay could be related to that there's an insufficiency in your application or your evidence. And instead of putting it in the pile of, okay, these are good, process the green card, you're in the problem pile. And I always tell people, when you're in the problem pile, you don't want to be in that pile. That's why you want to try to do everything the right way the first time around, because that pile gets lost. Yeah.
I like when the interviews are kind of fun. That's the best, when you can have a very comfortable adjustment interview. And most of the time they are like that, I think.
Well, Lee, big wedding is good, of course, and I'm sure you showed the pictures and stuff, but it's not the only thing they look at. It's not just that day. Big
wedding's important.
Big wedding is important, so they usually it's a little surprising.
Money means probably real marriage.
But they also want to see other things too. And again, we don't know here. It also comes down to how you guys did in the interview. So again, if you're
also it might not have anything to do with you.
Yeah, that's another thing. And even without the coronavirus, we'd be saying the same thing to you.
Yep, need to be calling again in 2 months.
Yep. I mean, look, if you think if you're getting anxious,
You can't make an info pass right now.
no, you can't make an info pass. But if you're getting anxious, you can always hire us to write them a letter. I don't know if it will do anything, but that's
Wouldn't hurt.
that's all we could do. We could do ombudsman requests. We could do different things to help you, but we are
There's
limited.
something else you can ask them.
Yeah, we are a little limited in forcing them to act. And we have
Nothing you can do.
yeah, unfortunately. So sometimes whenever you,
Especially with Corona.
yeah, the coronavirus, they haven't been open in New York. The office hasn't been open since middle of March. Yeah, and there's no reopen date yet. We know that they're kind of working from home, so
Yeah, we've had everyone's, we're filing things and they're going through fine. Yeah, it's okay.
I agree with Jessica.
I didn't know.
Yeah. So, but like I said, we can always write a letter for you or try, look into it for you. I don't want to disappoint you in saying that we might not end up finding out anything more than you're going to find out, because it's really difficult right now. You can schedule an appointment with you. Well, I'll send you a message later after this. No problem at all. And on that same note, you should keep, even if you don't use a lawyer, especially if you don't, you should keep a copy of everything you submit to immigration.
Oh, you have to, because if you need a lawyer or you need a judge to look at it later, then you need the papers.
A lot of times
You have nothing.
people come into our
You will
office.
not get papers back.
Right, you will not.
Or USCIS.
A lot of times people come in and they want, they're like, oh, it got denied, we want to refile. Well, when we look at, why did it get denied? They don't know. They don't know what evidence they submitted, and it makes it really difficult, and it can add a lot more time on. You're very welcome. So make sure you keep a copy of everything. And I can tell you how many times I have gone to an interview and they said we didn't submit something, and I've had to give them an extra copy.
Yeah, right.
How many times that happens?
I always submit everything.
Everything. And
because I don't like paper copies.
Right.
I want it out.
So it's important that you do it all right. When that, along with the 30-page questionnaire that we give, there's also a 6-page exhibit list, checklist, that covers everything you need, including identity documents, good faith marriage evidence, your affidavit of support, and I'll talk about that next, any of the documents to prove you're not a public charge, criminal history documents, all of the above. So it's a lot of stuff. It's hundreds of pages once you finally get the whole package together.
So we do not want your originals.
We don't. You're going to bring the originals to the office. We don't want to lose your originals. We'll make copies of them. We'll make copies of them. But
Yeah, bring them in.
but you take them home. Oh, thank you, Tanya. It's very kind. Do I need a joint sponsor? That is
Maybe.
next on my list. So what does that mean, Aaron? You want to explain affidavit of support?
No.
Yeah, you do.
All right, an affidavit of support, you got to show that you're not a public charge, that you're not going to cost the government a whole lot of money, that you're not going to be medical bills, and you're not going to go on welfare.
Well, no,
That's
the self-sufficiency. The affidavit of support is that you have someone who's going to.
Well, what I'm saying is, you
sponsor
need to
you.
have someone to vouch for you,
Right.
and say, look, if this guy's going to cost money, I'm going to support it. That's an
Right.
affidavit of support.
How important is it to file tax together or have a joint bank account when applying for a green card? Well, Laura,
Of course, it's important.
it is important. Like I said earlier, everybody's relationship is different, and everyone's a different financial situation. So I have clients who say, like, my spouse owes taxes, I don't want to file with him or her. Well, number one, at least check the box that you're married filing separately, not
You know what
single.
we always do?
What?
We have them go fix their tax situation.
No, well,
Give them
yes,
a payment plan.
but
Then they're happy.
we've gotten plenty of people that
Everyone's happy
We're
when
in
they
this-
get their tax situation figured out.
sometimes people don't have their social security number yet, and
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Well, you shouldn't have it yet.
So we talked a little earlier about conditional versus permanent residency, and part of it's a little easier to get the conditional approved because they know your marriage is still newer. A lot of times you're either new to the country, or haven't been here long, or haven't had lawful status, so are not expected to have all the evidence. But once you get your Social Security and your work authorization, you really do need to start doing those things. Joint bank account is important, but if you don't use the account, it's almost useless. It almost looks worse if you don't use the account. They're going to say, well, they're going to think you just opened it to show that you have a joint bank account.
The thing that you got to remember about all of this stuff is that the burden is on the petitioner and the immigrant to prove that there's a real thing here.
A real marriage. Real relationship.
So you got to have a bank account that you're using. You got to have a place you live together.
Like you should be sharing expenses. Yeah, you should be sharing expenses. Is that your dog? My Goldie?
No, it's Jessica Does.
Is that?
She needs to go out.
Oh.
She's sitting here.
Poor girl. So yeah, I mean,
No, she
again,
doesn't need to go out. She's locked out of the basement. That's
we always advise the more the merrier. So the more evidence you have of your joint relationship, your joint cell phone bill, utility bill, credit cards, cable bills.
You'll save money if you redo the cable contract. People always save money with this.
So we recommend as much as possible, but some people aren't going to have an investment account to list their spouse as beneficiary. That's okay. You don't have to have everything on the list. You're not expected to have everything on the list, but you need to have what makes sense for your own life. And that's really what it comes down to. You have to be able to explain to the immigration officer why you have certain things and don't have other things. You have to be ready for that, because if you don't have anything, they're going to ask. If you don't have a joint bank account, they might ask, because by the time your interview comes up,
the burden is on you.
You had your Social Security number. So
you don't have enough evidence. You haven't met the burden, and that's how it works.
So circling back to affidavit of support here, your spouse is going to need to provide taxes and proof of income. And you have to show that based on your household size, your spouse, in rare instances, the intending immigrant, either has enough income.
Almost never.
Either has enough income or income plus assets. If your spouse doesn't make enough money, then you need a joint sponsor who's going to sign the same form, also give us the taxes and proof of income. And that's apart from the self-sufficiency stuff. We're going to probably do a whole Facebook Live on public charge one of these days, because it's a huge topic that is
kind of an ugly one.
Yeah, it is ugly. It's the regulation that they publish about it is 800 pages. 800 pages. So
I don't think anyone wants that Facebook Live. They should just really public charge. They should go to a lawyer.
Yeah, that's true.
No one wants that.
Yeah, but I don't want to touch that right now.
Find someone who knows what it means, and then ask them.
But anyways, let's move on to what everybody's favorite question, but everybody's group of favorite questions about what to expect when we're talking about. We've already had some questions about this processing time.
I know the first answer. Can I say it?
Well, I didn't ask the question.
Okay, what to expect in the immigration process? It's going to cost more than you expect, and it's going to take longer than you expect. That's what you can expect.
That would be my slogan if I made an immigration practice. That's true, but let's give people some hope here.
All right.
At the end of the tunnel, you're welcome, Laura. At the end of the tunnel, there is a light, and that's your green card. So it sucks going through it, but you're gonna be okay. And
it doesn't always.
No, well, you know what I mean. That's what you're trying to get. If you're, I'm not.
You get to meet us. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, obviously, as you can see, we can be quite entertaining together. So the first question that I was going to say people ask, Aaron, every immigration lawyer's favorite question that we've already answered to some extent: how long is it going to take?
Longer than you think it should.
I tell people, this is when you practice your patience. Do some meditation.
Now, realistically,
you got to be patient.
Here, if you're living in Connecticut, it's pretty quick up here.
And Boston, it's like
3 years.
It was 4 months.
Right? It's like 11 months in Connecticut. 10 months.
Well, right now we don't really know because.
I mean, just the most recent ones we've just finished. I mean, it's great. It's so much better here. But
until they open
New York,
it's
1.5 to 3 years.
Yep.
I think there's going to be less and less 751s, and ultimately
That's
it's going to
true.
save people time, and it's going to save people a lot
If
of money.
if it takes them more than if you get married and it takes them more than
You get that full
2
10-year
years,
green card.
you don't have to do the 751, which is a lot harder. Get approved takes a lot longer. It's been taking over like 2 years now to get those approved. But most people,
We're going to have to charge more money to the initials if we can't get 751s.
okay, most people, by the time they get their I-751 approved, are already, like I said, eligible for naturalization, assuming they're still living and married to their spouse and living with their spouse. So it can benefit you both ways. So that's nice. So back to what to expect. We'll talk about once you get everything together, all your evidence, all your application. What we do, we put a nice cover letter on, we put a nice exhibit list, put it in order, explain what it all is. Like I said, you want to make it as simple as possible for immigration. You mail it out. About 2, 3, 4 weeks later, you're going to get a receipt notice for each of the forms that you filed. So you'll know that they cashed your check and that they're starting to process it.
And if you don't get one, here's a good tidbit for everybody. If you pay your filing fees with a money order, you'll never know when it gets deposited. If you pay your filing fees with a check, so like if a lawyer writes it from a business account or an escrow account, then you'll know when the bank deposits that check. And sometimes we'll have an application where we know they've deposited the check, which means it's stamped in, but we don't get the receipt notice yet, but we feel a lot more comfortable knowing that it's accepted.
Right.
And sometimes we'll check it after like a few weeks, and the client will call us and say, hey, what's going on? And we'll notice that it hasn't been, accepted, and maybe there's something wrong with the mail, or that it hasn't been properly, stamped in. So if possible, use a check that you can verify the deposit status as opposed to a money order.
You can also play with the credit card too.
Oh, you can now, I guess.
Yeah, there's a form. But yeah, that's very true. So you get your receipt notice. A few weeks after that, you're going to get your biometrics notice, which is your fingerprint appointment. I don't know.
That's what we're going to be doing.
That's great. So biometrics appointment. It's when you do your fingerprints. Right now, all the offices are closed. That's a big thing. People have not been able to do their fingerprints, and that's how they do your background check. So hopefully the application support centers will open soon so people can do that. They've actually usually they do your fingerprints, and then 3 or 4 months later you get your work permit. If you were eligible and apply for a travel document, your travel document, and then following that, your social security card. And they used to never issue those without doing your fingerprints, but due to COVID.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, due to COVID they had been, which is...
I can't believe that. That's one thing I can't imagine that they're doing.
I was surprised too, but people aren't...
I figured that they would call that as some sort of excuse to not give it to you for a while.
Yeah, but I don't think...
Maybe I'm just getting a little disheartened.
No, I don't think Social Security's open, though, the Social Security agency, because I've had a bunch of clients contact me and say that they haven't gotten their card yet.
Yeah, but we have no idea about that stuff.
Yeah,
We don't get
there's a box that we check if you want one when you apply for your work
permit.
permit.
For you, but
yeah,
they don't send us any receipts from Social Security. They don't do that.
So like I said, 3 to 4 months after you file, you typically get your work permit and travel document, which is nice because while you're waiting for your green card interview, which can take a long time these days, you get to legally work. You're not tied to one employer, like if you're on a work visa, and you can travel abroad and re-enter without a problem. And you can also renew both. They're valid for a year, but you can renew it until your interview, until you get your green card. So that's at least helpful for a lot of people, of course. And then typically after that, about 6 months-ish, you're going to have your first, hopefully only, interview. But before I get to...
it's normally more than 6 months in New York now.
Yeah, but actually, they cut it down. It was 6 months right before COVID. It was really cut down. But before I get to that, I just want to mention an RFE, and that's stands for Request for Evidence. If you don't, we rarely get those with these types of cases unless immigration says we didn't submit something that we did.
Or if they have a problem with the document because it's from somewhere.
Oh yeah, they don't grab.
They'll say the birth certificate's not good enough, or the marriage certificate's not good enough, or something like that.
Exactly, yeah. So you want to avoid RFEs because they delay your case. They're not going to, sometimes they won't even give you a work permit, because if you're missing initial evidence, first of all, they could cash your filing fee and then just reject it. We've seen that before. So you want to, no, not with us, but people have come into us and said that.
I have not seen that before.
Where yeah, I've seen it. But whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, you want it to be as complete as possible, because whenever you get it,
oh yeah,
I talked about the piles earlier, that if everything is good, you go in one pile. If it's not, you go in the other pile. The other RFEs are in the other pile.
That's an immigration.
Yeah, yes, 100%. That's with USCIS. So if you don't send in everything you're supposed to, and USCIS puts you in that other pile, sometimes cases get lost in time and space there. You know, it's like limbo. So you don't.
Sometimes we do need to write them a letter and say, hey, what's going on?
Tanya says, I understand the violence against men's case. He's now in a second work permit, still hasn't got an interview. It started his in 2016. So what Tanya's asking about is with VAWA, or Violence Against Women or Men Can Apply To Act, which takes the place of the marriage petition. And these are for abused spouses of U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or children, or parents. Our previous Facebook Live, which we invite you to watch, the rerun, which is on our Facebook page, was on Violence Against Women's Act. So we weren't going to get into that too much, but...
So what was her question? Let's just answer it.
Well, it's not, she's just wondering, her friend applied for VAWA in like 2016 and still hasn't been approved, is what she's saying. And the lawyers...
That's a long time.
That is a long time. Yeah,
that's a long time.
Because we've had a lot of VAWAs
that's a weird one.
in that time period get approved. Like, that's been applied since then.
It doesn't take 4 years.
It shouldn't take... It shouldn't. There's something going on. We've had people come to us who've tried filing...
Make sure that it's still even pending.
Yeah. Well, he has his second work... Well, she said he has his second work permit, so it sounds like he renewed it. But we don't know when that is. So, yeah, I mean, that sounds like something's wrong. So, it shouldn't take that long. Yeah, definitely not. So then you get to...
There was a time period, remember, a few years ago where things got filed because there was a mail problem?
I think I remember that, yeah. But there were also... VAWAs they've kind of sped up a little bit more now, but they have been taking a really long time for a while. Like, even if I'm not sure, Tanya, if his VAWA is approved yet, because with a VAWA, it's a different office than the office where you'd have your interview and process your green card.
It's up in St. Albans, Vermont.
Right. So... It's
on a lake. It's beautiful. It's just under Canada.
Great. So sometimes we see, like, people will get their VAWA approved, and it could take, like, a year plus to get the green card, because they have to transfer it to the other office and whatnot. So you should tell your friend to reach out to us, because it sounds like something is wrong with that, though. 4 years.
Or his lawyer should write a letter to immigration and find out what's going on.
Yeah, we've had some cases where we've had clients, we don't know why, it just took forever. And we bug them, we file case status inquiries all the time, ombudsman requests, we have them go to their elected representative. Sometimes they're pretty helpful, sometimes they're not. But unfortunately, there's limited things you can do, but there are things you can do, and you should. And so then you get to the interview, and this is one of the most stressful things for people, because they get very nervous, and I'm not talking about fake marriages. I'm talking about real marriages. People are just nervous. I know people who, that I've personally known, who have been dating for like 4 or 5 years and got married, and they they said the wrong thing in the interview because they were nervous. Some people have nerves, and that's okay. You shouldn't be nervous, though, because you're not doing anything wrong. You're just proving that you have a real marriage. And
I would be nervous.
Your first interview, if you're not in removal proceedings, is going to be you and your spouse are going to go together. You're not going to be separated. You're going to bring all your updated evidence. Any nerves you have, you should have your lawyer come then. If you have any criminal history, any serious immigration violations, any public charge issues, anything that might become a problem, like if you're not squeaky clean, you might want a lawyer to come, because I've been in plenty of interviews where the USAS officer would have denied it if I didn't explain to them what the law is, unfortunately. And I think earlier we heard that from Seeley that the immigration officer was not very nice to her and her husband. And I've heard, I'm not saying this is right, and I don't agree with this, but I've had a lot of clients who they've said they've gone to interview without us, and they were so mean, and then they had the lawyer there, and they were so nice. And that's not how it's supposed to be, but that is the reality, unfortunately, at this point. And that's just how immigration is. So I don't mind going to them. I enjoy going to them, especially when we get told at the interview that someone's getting a green card. It's very exciting, and it's nice to be a part of that. But the first interview, like I said, you're not going to be separated. The second interview, if you don't pass the first and they don't approve your green card, again, you get put into that other pile, and eventually you get scheduled for what's called a Stokes interview. If you're already in removal proceedings at the time you get married, you don't have a first interview. You only have a Stokes interview. So your spouse will go in. They will it will just your spouse and the officer, and if you have an attorney, they will ask them questions. You're going to leave. Your spouse is going to come in by themselves. They're going to ask them the same exact questions. Then the spouse is going to have everybody come together. The officer is going to have you and your spouse come together and then say, okay, here's all the questions that I asked you where you gave me different answers. Explain your different answers.
And then you run.
And then you run. No. And then you pray. I think is better.
No. It's not such a big deal.
No, I'm not saying it's a big deal, but hopefully you don't have too many discrepancies, and you have
a magical secret. Okay?
What?
Amanda, I'm telling them all the secret.
What?
Okay. You do a practice interview.
Oh yeah, we always do a practice interview.
Oh, it works so well. I have a list that we've compiled of all the questions that we've heard. We go through them.
Because, like I said, people just get nervous. You feel pressure. Even though there's not other
kid's birthday. Not everybody knows their kid's birthday. Don't feel bad. Just practice a little bit. I know my kid's birthday, by the way.
I know your kids' birthdays too.
There you go.
So
I don't say them, but I know them.
It is, the first interview. If you have, you don't. A lot of times people don't bring an attorney with them. It's always recommended, just because, like I said, the experience sometimes is just sooner. Amanda, she asked me personal questions. Example, how come I acquired a 2018 vehicle and then I had a big wedding in January of 2019? And I think that's a weird question. That's a weird question. They asked her, so Seeley says she acquired a 2018 vehicle and then they had a big wedding in January of 2019, and they were asking her why, I guess the sequence of those events. Yeah, they like I said, the way I describe to my clients when I go into these interviews, what my role is I'm like a referee who's on your side. So I'm not allowed to answer questions for you. I'm not allowed to do anything.
That's a nice way to say it.
I think so. I'm there to make sure you get treated fairly, and if the officer isn't treating you fairly, I can step in, and I've had to before.
Also, if it gets denied and we're there, we know what we're talking about when we have to do an appeal or a request to reconsider something.
Right.
If you're not there, then we can't do it because we don't know what we're talking about.
That's actually come in handy many times. I write down every question that's asked and every answer.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, it's boring to be there. Oh, and it helps people.
Celia, are you saying she was surprised that you went on a honeymoon or didn't go on a honeymoon? Because that's.
I'm surprised too.
A lot of people don't go on honeymoons; they're expensive.
I know. I'm joking. Just joking.
No, I know. I'm just saying So it's weird if the officer was worried about
they're
that.
They're trying to egg you on to get.
Yeah, they're trying to get you stressed out and stuff.
These guys are. Look, that's why I always say the key is the most important thing to do is to have fun with the interview. If you can have fun with the interview, you can ace it, no question.
I always show people pictures of cute puppies before we go in, because cute puppies calm me down. And
a lot of officers love puppies too.
Everyone loves puppies. If you don't, I mean, I don't know.
Trust the people who don't.
I'm not going to really trust you, and so just pretend that you like the puppies. So But no, I always try to like take your mind off of it. And I'm not gonna you can wait for 3 hours for them to call you. How long we stay where? Oh, so she was shocked and repeat. Yeah, they're just trying to get you off your game, Celia. They're trying to see your reaction. Like who knows? Who knows?
Also, what are you gonna do? If I was an officer, I would really screw with people. I must say.
Well,
I would be so good,
Aaron.
I would never approve anybody though.
Well, that's why you're never doing that.
Right.
But we get all of our clients approved. If you're eligible and you have a real marriage, we will get you approved. There is no doubt.
Yeah. We don't take all the cases.
We will not take your case.
If you got some fakey case,
we're not there to judge your marriage. But we're not there to say who has a real marriage and who doesn't. But if you indicate to us that it's not real in any way, we will not go forward.
Somebody else. I have no interest.
And if you can't produce any evidence that shows your joint relationship, or when we go to do our practice, you can't answer one question about each other, we're gonna tell you, we can't. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to us. Like it's not. So.
It's not worth it to you either.
Exactly. I mean, so we've talked about a lot today about the process, and this is really just like a snippet of the entire picture. Aaron's not funny, Tanya. You don't have to encourage him. But
you can't see this. So whatever you're saying is what I hear. So thank you, Tanya.
Celia, I will do my best. I will do my best. We will touch base after this. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff, and honestly, it has gotten more complicated lately. And if it doesn't go the right way, and you have to do it over, like we said at the very beginning, it's just going to cost you more. And
not because we're being jerks or something, it's because the procedural process is very hard.
Yes.
When you have to deal with appealing things.
Well,
or making motions and things like that.
Well, put it this way: the filing fees alone for all those $1760.
$1760, and they're gonna go up.
They're gonna go. They go up every so often. So the point is,
crystal ball, they're gonna go up.
Even if you don't use a lawyer, you're losing $1760 if you get denied and have to do it again. And when you do it again, all of your mistakes in the past, they're like we said, they don't forget. They're an elephant. They don't forget. So doing it the right way will help you avoid delays, and it will help you avoid problems that don't need to be problems. Basically,
the answer is very simple. Your immigration status, your spouse's immigration status is one of, if not the, most important aspects of your life. And if it's not, then you probably need to reconsider your value system.
Yep.
But you put a couple bucks into it because you know what you're doing. And because you don't know what you're doing, and you know that it's the right thing to do. You don't have to. People can try to do it themselves.
People do.
But if it doesn't work, you could just, lose your spouse, that's all. I mean, it happens.
It can, yeah.
A lot. Every day. You don't screw with it. You don't do open heart surgery. You don't do surgery on yourself. You don't screw around with your taxes. You don't screw around with your immigration. And
Aaron, you made a good point earlier that if something seems too good to be true, it might just be. Don't go to the people that say, "Oh, I can help you fill out the forms." Make sure it's a lawyer.
These notarios, very illegal.
You only use a lawyer. Not only is it criminal, it will hurt you. And even if you didn't know what they did, and you just...
That's the worst.
It doesn't matter. Yes, Tanya. No, I mean, seriously, it really breaks our heart sometimes for people to come in and things just got messed up and it's hard to explain away. Even if we totally believe it. Person completely thought they were doing the right thing. Make sure you're the person helping you is a lawyer. Ask them for their bar number. You can look it up. Every single lawyer in this country, you can make sure you can confirm that they're a lawyer in their state bar. Even with just their name. You go to the state, you type in Amanda Brooke Schaefer or Aaron David Paul Shapiro, you're going to find us. And you're not only going to find us, if we had any disciplinary history, you would see that too. And if they do, then you want to run. For sure.
No, not always.
Well, if a lawyer has disciplinary history?
Yeah. Depends what it's about.
I mean, there's usually...
Someone could miss court hearing. Something could happen. Emergencies.
No, usually that doesn't show up like that.
You can't judge people based on
Okay, well, if you see
someone based on a criminal record,
if you see disciplinary history, ask the lawyer about it. You have a right to know. There you go.
It's just a tidbit of information.
Before we go, there was a couple of questions I forgot to get to that were asked prior to. One was somebody went to get their I-94 online, which is their entry document. It's an arrival departure document. It's the thing. It used to be a piece of paper that they put in your passport. Now it's electronic. Right. Now it's electronic. If you came, I think after 2013, it would be electronic. And I will tell you from personal experience and looking up many I-94s online that a lot of times they're not correct. And there's even like a disclaimer on it that they're not correct. And sometimes they are not found. I've had a family, they all came on the same day, and like one of the daughters, her I-94 just didn't exist. The good news is there's different things you can do because this goes towards showing your eligibility that you were entered and you enter with inspection and admission. One way you could do it, you have your visa and your entry stamp you should have. That can suffice when you tell them, like, look, because a lot of times the government has it anyway. USCIS is sitting there looking at it, and you're like, why isn't it show up?
I've had that before.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's so obnoxious. And I said to the officer, I was like, you're looking at that. You see the admission. Oh, yes. Yeah, but it's, it's my printout.
Yeah.
I remember that, and I was like, what?
So another thing you can do is a FOIA request, which stands for Freedom of Information Act request. That's going to give you your entire immigration file. However, the downside is it can take a long time. It can take over 4 months to get. So, sometimes what we do is we file for.
What you do is if you don't have it, you just file an application I-102 along with.
Well, I was going to say that's another option. That's another.
You have to.
Well,
you have to.
Well, that costs money. So.
Yeah, but you got to do it. I mean, if you can't find your I-94, you just file for a replacement.
No, but if you
with
get
the concurrent package, you just get it done. Just be done. $400, you throw it in there, get it done.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying
Sure.
there are other options, and that it's not necessary.
Don't waste your time. Get it filed.
Stop it. It's not necessarily. I've had people where they don't have their I-94 and they've proved no problem with their entry stamp and visa. So it's happened. You ideally would like to have it, but we would advise you do the one I-102 or a FOIA. Sometimes the FOIA doesn't have it in there.
You need to have it. Yeah, it's not even in there. You need the I-102.
No, you do, but there is.
I think it's in there.
Whatever. I mean, we recommend that. I know we've had clients. Maybe it was before this administration that
Might have
broke
been
through.
someone with a 245I.
Maybe, I don't remember. And then there's another question about someone who's a dreamer. So DACA. She's married to a U.S. citizen for 15 years. She entered illegally when she was 5 to 6 and never had legal problems. I don't think so. What are her chances of getting residency now? So, a couple of things. Number one, she said she entered. Very good question. She said she entered illegally. My first question would be, what do you mean? Do you mean no visa? Because
I'm assuming
that's what we're assuming. Because
crossing a border somewhere, probably without papers.
If you applied for DACA before you turned 18 and renewed timely, we have very good news for you.
How old is she? Did she say? How many years?
I don't know. She was 5 to 6 when she entered. She didn't say when she became.
So when did she say 15 years she's been married?
15 years she's been married.
So when did DACA come out?
2013, 2014.
So she was way over the dates then, probably.
It sounds like it, but let me just explain to everyone what we're talking about.
Right.
So because we have actually a bunch of cases right now with clients in this situation where
Yeah, that girl.
there's a couple where somebody entered illegally, so no visa, across the border, married a U.S. citizen, and then went through the process. They applied for DACA before they turned 18, and then timely renewed it, and they were still on DACA now. And what's nice is, we talked about earlier, if you don't have an entry with inspection, you have to leave the country and come back. But if you also stayed past your 18th birthday and didn't have something like DACA or TPS in some cases, then it's called you accrued unlawful presence. So the second you leave this country, you're going to have a bar to return, and that's why you need the waiver, either a 3-year bar, a 10-year bar, or.
And then there's the trouble because of the initial entry that was unlawful.
Right. So the
magic of DACA, the whole deal with DACA was that people could get travel documents and leave, and then they'd come back.
So hold on, that was Laura. She says, I'm 36 now, and I was over 18 when I got my DACA.
Yeah, exactly.
She's been redoing it. She takes to get my green card while DACA. So, Laura, you're going to actually have to file a 601A waiver like we talked about. You should contact us you should contact us after this because you need to make sure that there's an extreme hardship that we can prove for your U.S. citizen spouse. But essentially,
Do you have kids?
I don't know. Do you have kids? If you do, look, the 601. I mean, it helps, but
I know it does help because you can't file it based on the hardship to the kids, as we discussed earlier.
right.
But you can file it based on the hardship to the spouse as it relates as a result of the kids. You know.
Yeah. Well, we still talk about the
If
kids.
the kids are going to have all sorts of psychological problems, or maybe they're getting medication they're not going to get, and then the husband. Maybe the kids are sick and he'd have to quit his job to take him to the hospital every day.
Yes,
I don't know.
yeah.
There's a million things.
So Laura, what you're gonna have to do once your I-130 is approved, if it hasn't been
You're
yet,
gonna have to go out and come back.
but before you do, you're gonna need to file. You can get that's what's nice about this waiver. You get to file the waiver, wait in the U.S. until the waiver's approved, and then when the waiver's approved, you're gonna go out you're gonna basically leave when you get your interview notice. That's going to be at your whatever country you're from, at your U.S. consulate or embassy there, and it's about 3 weeks. You have time.
People go visit their families normally.
So you go to your interview, and everything goes good. You come back, you enter the country as a permanent resident, and they mail you a green card. But if you weren't fortunate enough to be able to apply for DACA before you turned 18, then you need the waiver. If you did apply before you turn 18, you still have to leave the country, but you don't need the waiver.
Because there's no unlawful presence.
Exactly, and as we mentioned, the waivers they're not easy, and we always tell people we like to be honest because we don't want to get expectations up, and we don't like to tell people we think it'll get approved if it doesn't. So we won't file a waiver and have people pay all this money because they're expensive unless we really think we can get it approved. So we have a very
There's something there.
Yeah, there has to be something because when they say extreme hardship, that means a hardship to your qualifying relative that is more than the average person. So it has to be extreme. So it takes a lot of work to prove that. And again, it has to be your qualifying relative will suffer if you leave without them or if they come with you out of the country. And so you have to show both sides of that, which is not easy. So yeah, that was a great. Thank you for that question, Laura. If anyone else has any questions, if not, we've been going. I put this up for an hour, and we just smashed through that hour barrier around 1:22.
Yeah, Goldie fell asleep. She's out.
And if you want to see pictures of Goldie, she's our therapy dog at work, and who's really missing work, but she's gonna be back next week, hopefully. But if you like us and follow us on Facebook to see our next episodes, and we'll have another one in a couple of weeks. We haven't decided on the topic yet. We're open to topic suggestions, but we'll have a good one for you guys. Maybe crime and immigration.
I was thinking transmission repair.
Transmission repair. Okay. Well, I won't be on that one then. But thank you for joining us. We hope we helped. Celie, I'll touch base with you after. Laura, give us a call. If you want to talk more about your case, and anyone else, we're here to help. And I know with COVID, people don't want to go outside. We do all sorts of video calls, telephone calls. I don't want to
go in.
We have clients all over the country, all over the world. We've never had a problem connecting with people.
Remember, half of immigrants outside America.
That's very true. You're welcome, Tanya. Thank you, everybody. We look forward to working with you too, Celie. Have an awesome night and happy 4th to everybody. We will see you in a few weeks.